They ignored the fact that you got chartered flights because of this girl. They ignored the fact that ratings were going through the roof because of this girl. Instead, they resented it because they said, yo, we were doing stuff long before Caitlin Clark got here, and y'all wasn't paying attention then. But now, the young white girl comes along, and y'all want to sit up there and shower all of this praise and all of this attention that was earned before she ever came along. The resentment is understandable, but it's not about Caitlin Clark. It's about what she represents. My point is, grow up.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's not sugarcoat this. What we're seeing from the WNBA isn't just mismanagement, it's outright malpractice. And no one is holding back more than ESPN's Stephen A. Smith. He's not whispering, he's not being polite, he's calling the league out in the most public way possible. His message is simple but devastating. The WNBA had one job, just one, and they failed. Their job was to protect Caitlin Clark, the single player keeping ticket sales alive, driving national viewership, and turning casual sports fans into invested followers. Instead of safeguarding her as the league's crown jewel, they let her get hacked, shoved, and body-checked night after night. Every time the refs swallowed their whistles, every time the commissioner turned away, the risk of disaster grew, and now the inevitable has happened. Clark is sidelined, and the WNBA's so-called progress is collapsing. Stephen A. calls this out as not just bad luck, but preventable negligence. He's right, when your league's entire economic survival depends on one player, you don't just let her play unprotected. You shield her like the billion-dollar asset she is. The fact that they didn't has exposed the WNBA's leadership as careless, short-sighted, and dangerously incompetent. Numbers don't lie, and when it comes to Caitlin Clark, the numbers scream louder than any critic ever could. Let's lay it out clearly. Clark isn't just a promising rookie, she's the financial heartbeat of the WNBA. When she steps on the court, attendance skyrocket. Indiana Fever home games drew over 17,000 fans per night, a staggering 319% increase from the previous year. On the road, teams were literally moving their games to larger arenas just to fit in the demand created by her presence. Television ratings tell the same story. Clark-led games averaged over 1.1 million viewers, compared to a meager 94,000 without her. That's not a dip, that's a nosedive. Even merchandise sales doubled, with Clark's jersey breaking records across the country. This isn't about hype, it's about undeniable impact. Yet despite this mountain of evidence, the league treated her like an ordinary player, instead of the once-in-a-generation phenomenon she is. Imagine an NBA without LeBron James or Steph Curry, and then picture the league brushing it off as no big deal. That's exactly what the WNBA has done with Clark. Stephen A. Smith's fury is fueled by these cold, hard facts. Caitlin Clark is not just part of the WNBA, she is the WNBA's economic engine, and if the league can't admit that, they're not just blind, they're actively sabotaging themselves. Caitlin Clark's rise hasn't just sparked excitement, it's ignited resentment, and Stephen A. Smith isn't shying away from calling it out. The numbers prove Clark is the one filling arenas and breaking TV records. But instead of embracing her success as a rising tide that lifts all boats, too many WNBA veterans see it as a threat. They argue, we've been here for years grinding, playing great basketball, and nobody paid attention. But now this young white rookie shows up, and suddenly the spotlight is blinding. That frustration might be human, but it's also misplaced. The truth is simple, the public didn't suddenly wake up because the game magically changed. It woke up because Clark made them care. And that spotlight isn't something to resent, it's something to share. Stephen A. put it bluntly, stop whining and grow up. Fans aren't disrespecting past stars by celebrating Clark. They're finally paying attention at all, and that means opportunity for everyone. The resentment is real, but if players let bitterness overshadow the chance to elevate the league together, they'll squander the very moment they've all been waiting for. Clark represents more than herself. She represents relevance, sponsors, and generational momentum. Instead of resenting it, the rest of the league should be smart enough to ride the wave. Instead, it's the drama. Stephen A. Smith and countless analysts have zeroed in on how Reese has leaned into controversy, often overshadowing the actual game. From mocking opponents to exaggerated injuries, to using social media to keep her name trending. Reese has turned herself into more of a headline generator than a basketball star. Let's be clear, Reese is talented, no, but while Clark is shattering attendance records and carrying the weight of the league on her back, Reese seems more invested in cultivating an image than improving her efficiency or consistency on the hardwood. That imbalance hasn't gone unnoticed by fans, who increasingly roll their eyes at Reese's antics while praising Clark's relentless focus. Stephen A's criticism here cuts deeper. When the league desperately needs unity and professionalism to support its golden goose, Reese's theatrics feed into the very perception that the WNBA is chaotic in image. Every time she inserts herself into the narrative with another stunt, it detracts from the product the league is trying to sell. Instead of reinforcing Clark's impact by showing she has equally committed rivals, Reese comes across as bitter, distracted, and dangerously close to sabotaging her own legacy. The harsh reality: Angel Reese's brand of attention isn't lifting the league, it's weighing it down. Every great collapse has a face, and in this case many are pointing to Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. Stephen A. Smith didn't hold back. He accused Engelbert of fumbling the bag with historic incompetence. Let's be real, the WNBA stumbled into a once-in-a-generation superstar in Caitlin Clark, a player who had the power to transform the league's relevance overnight. Any competent commissioner would have seized that opportunity with both hands, building marketing campaigns around her, shielding her from dangerous fouls, and positioning her as the centerpiece of the league's growth. Instead, Engelbert's strategy seemed hesitant, almost embarrassed by Clark's meteoric rise. She downplayed Clark's impact, issued bland press releases, and refused to step in when referees allowed Clark to take constant punishment on the court. Even worse, she let jealousy and resentment among veteran players dictate the tone instead of controlling the narrative from the top. Stephen A. framed it perfectly. It's like stumbling upon a genie in a bottle and wasting your wish on something meaningless. The league had lightning in its grasp, yet Engelbert treated Clark like just another draft pick. That failure isn't just about poor marketing, it's about endangering the league's very survival. Because when Clark sits, the ratings sink, the seats empty and the sponsors vanish. And Engelbert's hands-off approach has left the WNBA exposed, vulnerable and scrambling to explain how they squandered the best opportunity they've had in decades. Fans, media outlets and sponsors all erupted the moment the news broke, and the WNBA is now staring down the kind of backlash it can't afford. Social media exploded with hashtags demanding accountability, with thousands of fans openly swearing they won't watch another game until Clark returns. Ticket resales plummeted overnight. Seats that were once selling out at premium prices now sit empty or marked down by half. Entire arenas that were packed when Clark was scheduled to play suddenly have whole sections unsold. The ripple effect doesn't stop there. Sponsors who were lining up to associate with the Clark brand are now second-guessing their investments. Meanwhile, talk shows and sports networks are circling like sharks, amplifying the narrative that without Clark, the WNBA product simply doesn't hold up. Stephen A. Smith captured the moment with one of his trademark lines: "You had one job, protect her, and you blew it." And the proof is right there in the public reaction. Instead of celebrating record growth, the WNBA is dealing with boycotts, skepticism, and anger from the very fan base Clark created. The message is clear. People weren't tuning in for the league. They were tuning in for Caitlin Clark. Without her, the WNBA isn't a hot ticket. It's background noise. And that truth is cutting deeper than any injury ever could. This isn't just about her shooting range or her ability to command double teams. It's about the way she has fundamentally altered the trajectory of women's basketball. In just months as a pro, Clark has accomplished what the WNBA has been striving toward for nearly 3 decades: relevant. We're talking record-breaking TV ratings that rival men's sports broadcasts, sellout crowds in cities that never cared about the WNBA before, and merchandise sales that dwarf every other player combined. But here's where the story becomes extraordinary. Clark's impact is not confined to basketball. She's become a cultural figure, a household name. People who don't know a single other WNBA player can recognize Clark instantly. She has kids begging their parents for her jersey. She has networks altering broadcast schedules around her games. And she has sponsors pouring money into the league for the first time at this scale. Stephen A. Smith emphasized the obvious: without Clark, the WNBA looks like a struggling business clinging to life. With her, it looks like a league on the cusp of a global breakthrough. That kind of influence is unprecedented, and it's why mishandling her rise isn't just a mistake, it's malpractice. Caitlin Clark isn't just another rookie, she's the cornerstone of the league's future, and the proof is everywhere you look, in the numbers, in the fans, in the spotlight she refuses to shrink under. One of the ugliest realities Stephen A. Smith pointed out is the quiet but unmistakable jealousy simmering inside the W. Instead of rallying behind Caitlin Clark as the face of the league, too many players view her as competition for attention, endorsements, and legacy. You can see it in the body language on the court, in the way opponents foul her harder than necessary, in the cold shoulder she sometimes gets during post-game handshake. Off the court, it's even more obvious: cryptic tweets, side comments in interviews, and dismissive remarks like she hasn't earned it yet. But here's the uncomfortable truth: Clark has earned it, and then she's the one packing arenas, driving TV ratings, and putting more eyes on the WNBA than ever before. Instead of appreciating how her success creates opportunities for everyone, jealousy has twisted the narrative into an us versus her mentality. That mindset is toxic, not just for Clark but for the entire league. Stephen A. framed it bluntly: this isn't the time for petty rivalries, it's the time for business. Every unnecessary hit Clark takes, every bitter comment tossed her way, feeds the perception that the WNBA can't handle its own success, and that perception could scare away the casual fans and sponsors Clark has brought in. If veterans and rivals can't rise above jealousy and see the bigger picture, they'll sabotage the golden era before it even begins. The stakes aren't personal pride, they're the survival of the league itself. Follow the money. That's where you see the real damage. Caitlin Clark wasn't just a star on the court, she was the league's economic engine. Sponsors who had previously ignored the WNBA suddenly lined up the moment Clark entered the league. Companies like Nike, Gatorade, and State Farm saw her as the gateway to tapping into a brand new audience of young fans and families. Her games weren't just televised, they were marketed like events, with advertisers willing to pay premium prices to get airtime during her minute. But the second Clark went down injured, the air got sucked out of the room. Sponsors don't buy into a league, they buy into the face of a league. Without Clark, the WNBA instantly feels like a risky investment again. Networks that were thrilled to promote Clark-heavy matchups are now quietly shifting their priorities, leaving the WNBA scrambling to keep their slots relevant. Even merchandise sales, a booming stream thanks to Clark jerseys, took a dip as fans questioned whether she'd be back soon. Stephen A. Smith hammered the point home: the WNBA put all its business momentum on Clark's shoulders, but failed to protect the very asset they were selling. It's like having $1 billion stock and leaving it exposed without insurance. Now every missed game is money lost, every sponsor hesitation is opportunity wasted, and every delay in Clark's return threatens the fragile business credibility the league had just begun to build. This isn't just about one player, one injury, or one season. It's about the very survival of the WNBA. Stephen A. Smith made it crystal clear: if the league mishandles Caitlin Clark, it risks losing not only its brightest star, but also the once-in-a-lifetime chance to cement women's basketball in the mainstream sports conversation. The WNBA has been fighting for decades to prove it belongs on the national stage. And for the first time, thanks to Clark, it had undeniable proof. The numbers, the crowds, the sponsorships, they were all there, but momentum is fragile. Fans who tuned in for Clark may not stick around if the league allows petty rivalries, cheap fouls, and poor management to dominate the narrative. Sponsors who wrote big checks could easily pull back, deciding that women's basketball is still too volatile to bet on, and networks, who finally gave the league primetime slots, might move on if the product loses its shine. This isn't just a crossroads, it's a cliff. Either the WNBA grows up, protects its stars, and builds on Clark's foundation, or it collapses back into irrelevance. Stephen A. warned it plainly: history won't remember the excuses, only the results. If Clark is mishandled, fans will walk away convinced the league can't sustain greatness. But if the WNBA finally gets it right, if it rallies behind Clark, nurtures her rivals into compelling storylines, and capitalizes on the cultural moment, it could transform women's sports forever. The next chapter is unwritten, but one thing is certain. The WNBA's future rests squarely on how it handles Caitlin Clark today.